Hello and welcome to the Practice Marketing Podcast, highlighting successful strategies from North America's fastest growing clinics and experts so you can learn from their wins and power your practice growth. Hi, I'm your host, Neil Trickett, CEO of Practice Promotion, and today's focus, we're going to talk about how you can build a scalable PT brand without losing patient-centered care. And we've got Steven Windwer here from Bay State Physical Therapy and Cypress Health Partners. And he's a physical therapist, chiropractor, and trailblazer in conservative healthcare. And so in 1990, Steven founded Bay State Physical Therapy with a single clinic and a mission to deliver exceptional non-surgical patient-centered care. And just in 5 years later, he launched a managing partner model that became the foundation of scaling across the Northeast. And under his leadership, Cypress Health Partners, which is the partner for Bay State Physical Therapy, MCR Chiropractic, and MVPT Physical Therapy, have grown to over 170 locations across 5 states, making them the Northeast's largest provider of PT and chiropractic services. And as CEO and now executive chairman, Steve has built high-performing teams, implemented scalable systems, and led with a focus on access, outcomes, and value. And for the last 7 years, Practice Promotions has had the pleasure of providing marketing support to the Cypress Health partner brands. And Steven is focused on strategy, leadership, and impact. And when he's not weightlifting, spinning, or I quote, attempting to make golf an activity he enjoys, he does really good in growing those businesses. So, Steven, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you having me, Neil.
Great. So just curious here, can you give our audience, kind of a little bit of background on your journey? And you started a single clinic focused on hands-on personalized care. And then we'll talk about like how did you preserve that patient-first approach as you scale to, over 170 locations?
Certainly. So I had one location, like you said, I'm a physical therapist and a chiropractor, so I'm dual degreed, which allowed my my practice to get off to a great start. I was able to hire other chiropractors and PTs to work with me, and things were going great. I was enjoying life and having a tremendous practice. And a couple of chiropractors that were local to me, who I became friends with, saw what I was doing, combining both PT and chiro, and they were like, "Hey, we've got the space to do it. We have no idea how to do physical therapy. Would you like to open an office with us?" And so my functional ADD kicked in, and I said, "Sure, I'll open a practice with you guys." And so we opened a PT office in 1995, Bay State Physical Therapy Randolph. And Neil, quite frankly, it failed miserably for 2 years, to the point where they came to me and said, "Hey, can you find someone to buy out our shares? This is not working." So they were busy with their practice. I was busy with our practice, and we just tried to, put this business model together. So I had a young therapist who was working for me at the time, and I asked him if he would be interested in joining me in this venture and becoming my partner. And he nervously agreed. He literally took 3 credit cards out, rubbed them together, paid them a very small amount of money to take them off the hook. And for what was a small amount of money in my mind was a gigantic amount of money for where he was in life. And what that caused him to is to show up early, to stay late, to make sure patient access was fantastic. He would show up on holidays. I mean, he was getting patients in the door. He made sure that patients had great outcomes and certainly had a great experience. And within 3 months, the practice took off, and a light bulb went off. I was like, wow, for 2 years, we failed in this model. But when I put a managing partner in place, someone who was really vested on how the patients were doing, that was the formula for success. A short time after that, I was treating a patient who came to me with some neck problems. And she was like, "Wow, I really like what you're doing here in this office. I see what you did in Randolph. I'm a physical therapist. I'd love to open an office with you in Brockton." So my functional ADD kicked in, and I said, "Sure, let's open an office in Brockton." It took off. That was my next managing partner. She had a friend who was a physical therapist who saw what she did. So I didn't have a business model, Neil. This was really out of the 3 main things that we strived with our managing partners were, look, if you really are motivated to take great care of patients, if you put patients first, make sure you have great access, come in on weekends, come in when they need you, make sure they get great outcomes, and certainly have a great experience. Those are the 3 pillars that are going to build a practice. And so that's how it started.
That's fascinating. I mean, it's always at the core of everything, right? Whether it's a PT clinic, whether it's a company making widgets, like if you build a very good product, you eventually get into, the growth phase, or you get the word of mouth going, and you can elaborate on that. But, if you where I see clinics sometimes struggle is that they start to grow. They start out with that core model where they're really small and they can focus heavily on patient care, but then there's that growth that occurs, and then operations get more complex, and things get more complex, and sometimes the patient side of it starts to go down a little bit, and then you can struggle.
So I think where we had a real advantage there is we had this managing partner model. So almost every location had a little chief operating officer that was very, very concerned about how every patient's experience was and how their outcomes were, and making sure they had great access. So as we began to grow, I realized very early on that my reach was just so far. But if I had partners who were as vested as I would, who had the same core values that I did about taking great care of patients, that we can grow in a way where we wouldn't sacrifice patient care.
Yeah, that's a really, really good model. I mean, you got skin in the game, right, from the managing partners. And so, can you help us understand sort of the history there? You brought on, partner into that location, then you opened a second location. Kind of like, what was the growth from there? What did that look like?
Early on, it was just, honestly, it was opportunistic. It was when someone came to me and said, "Oh, I'd like to partner with you," I my ADD kicked in, and then I found a location that I thought was a great location, and I put a chiropractic office in there, and then I added PT. Then I acquired a chiropractic office that was for sale, and I added PT to it, and the combination just really worked well. Then a PT came to us who had 3 locations and wanted to get out, and so then all of a sudden I was doing some very small acquisitions, but most of it was de novos. Most of it was either we were growing our own PTs that were growing to a point that saw what everyone else was doing, that came and kind of raised their hand and said, "Hey, I'm working really hard. I'm a really great therapist. I believe in what you believe in. Can we open a business together? Can I be a partner?" And so this managing partner model just kind of took on a life of its own. Again, no business degree, no math after high school, just really trying to, once we started having these partners, we started to build an infrastructure so that we could do the billing and collections, we could do the marketing, we could do the HR, we can handle all the things that business owners or PT really don't want to handle, and we can motivate them to just take care of patients, focus on doing a great job with patients, and then the business will build on itself if you have a great product.
Yeah, I love that. And so, was there a point where you said you were getting a lot of de novo clinics? Was there a point where it became more acquisition based, or became a little bit more of a hybrid in that terms?
Only after we took on private equity, which is in 2019. So for the first, doing my math now, if we opened in 90, we really started in 95, for the first 25, 30 years, it was mostly acquisition, like 90+% acquisition. I mean, mostly de novo, mostly just opening practice. And then once we took on private equity, we added a business development piece to it, and then started partnering with a lot more clinics.
Gotcha. Understood. And so, what did it look like in terms of when you got to a certain size, like, I don't know, maybe it was 10 locations, 20 locations, whatever it was, what did it look like for you in terms of your management team, your executive team? Like, how did that grow and evolve over time?
Yeah. So, we really ran a shoestring budget, and, we always did our billing internally. And then we added pieces really as we needed them. And so, if there are owners that are, kind of growing, it's like you're going up a stairs, right? Like you've got a lot of income coming in and you're making a lot of money, but then you've got to add infrastructure. So then all of a sudden you kind of plateau, you might even go down a bit. You can't do that unless you put investments into the business in order to do that. And the biggest investments you make are in people and in infrastructure. So it's hard for me to remember exactly what the infrastructure looked like at 10 or 20 locations, but it's nowhere what it looks like today with, the amount of folks that we have to support our teams in the field.
And I would think that would be, I find it fascinating. I'm sure a lot of our listeners would find it fascinating too, who are, maybe a 2 or 3, 4 location practice. Like, what does it look like at 170 locations? Like, what does the executive team look like? What does the kind of middle level management have to look like in order to make that happen, make that work?
Yeah, it's a gigantic investment, and that's where, having investors in the business is very, very helpful. For not only dollars but for guidance. But you need to build out, especially in this environment. You need to build out a talent acquisition team. You need to have a fully functioning HR team. You need to have a business development team who not only knows how to open locations, and where to open them and how to outfit them, and then also how to acquire and find really good partners. And so there's a lot of investments that need to be made. You need an IT department that can grow with you, right? So we've made all these. We need a marketing team, as you know, you work with our marketing team that can, do the digital stuff and grow with you as you grow. So we've made tremendous investments over the years to be able to grow. And so again, being a little bit larger provides us with a lot of resources, and it allows us to invest in our team. And Neil, if I can, jump on the pulpit just for a second, there's a lot of, negativity about bigger companies. To me, I'm a single location, right? And then all of my partners are 1, 2, 3, 4 locations. That's it. And we're very community based, and we do lots of things in the community. We have tremendous values on taking care of patients, but there's this negativity that's circling around that bigger is terrible and bad. And I'd like to say that it's not that way. It's actually the reverse. We have the opportunity with our resources to invest in our team, to provide career growth, to do a lot of advocacy for the profession. Our vision for the profession is one where PTs are actually in the forefront of musculoskeletal care. Personally, I'm very much against, surgeries and medications when they're not necessary. Obviously, sometimes they're necessary. But, we know that if you call a doctor for a neck pain, back pain, shoulder pain, whatever, it's going to take you a month or two to get in, maybe. Then you're going to get pain meds. Then you're going to get imaging. Then you're going to get injections. Then you might get surgery you don't need. We should be seeing the first. We're going to drive down costs. And by the way, we should get paid a whole lot more than we're getting paid. So we're just doing a tremendous amount. Brady Hill, our new CEO, is just in the forefront of this, and is just just doing a phenomenal job advocating for the profession. And so when I hear people talk about like, oh, big is bad, we wouldn't want to work for a bigger company. Make sure you investigate what the bigger companies stand for, because we stand for making sure patients get what they need, making sure PTs are put into the forefront of where they should be, and investing in our teams. Sorry about that. I'm a little passionate about it.
It's a great pulpit, and it makes a lot of sense, because we do hear some negative connotations of large corporate entities coming in, but I think where that may come from is if they don't have that underlying, we care about the patients, we care about making a difference, and it just
we're also provider led, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is helpful. Our VP of clinical operations is a PT. Our VP of operations excellence is a PT. Like we're provide, or all our RDs are PTs. Our regional directors. We're very much into taking care of patients and understand what being in the trenches is all about.
Would that be some advice you have for clinics? Because I get a chance to talk to practice owners that, they might be 20, 30 locations. They're looking at bringing in more private equity, things like that. Is that something that you would advise? How can you keep that patient-centered care? Is it keeping, physical therapist in the mix, being on the member board? Like, what does that look like?
I would say be very careful and be very, certain on whatever partners you're bringing in. So our private equity partners are amazing, right? And I've met tons of them, and I've heard, horror stories about, you get in with private equity and they're just, demanding, that you see more patients and do this. These guys that we partnered with, said, hey, Steve, you're the leader of this organization, you're the management team. We're investing in you. We're here to support you. You take care of patients. We're gonna help in any way we can, but they're not telling us how to run the business. which, I found a group that was thoughtful and had high integrity. My advice to anybody out there that are interviewing folks is make sure you are really comfortable on who you're partnering with. And so, you'll talk to groups and then they'll try to talk you into, seeing more patients or using more PTAs or whatever the case may be, to just try to make an extra buck. And our guys were, keep doing what you're doing. We're going to help you and support you, and bring ideas to the table. And they have, and they've been fantastic. And a lot of their ideas are about, hey, where are the stuck points you're going to have in your business? Oh, you know what? It's talent acquisition. Let's invest in talent acquisition. And you know what? You guys aren't getting paid enough. How can we invest and get more rate? And where are the things, so they're very thoughtful and full of integrity. And so my advice would be, when you're interviewing folks, make sure you know who you're getting, becoming partners with.
Great advice there. I think that goes for a lot of business, whether you're looking to merge with someone bigger, or maybe you're acquiring people, or you're looking to bring in someone like private equity. It's about looking at relationship, right? Finding the right
we're trying to partner with folks all the time, smaller businesses, and we can't with some of them because there's not a core value mix. They just don't see things the way we do, and so patients aren't number one. And so we're really proud of the partners we've brought on, and they're great fits, and it's allowed us to grow and improve our access in the areas that we're in, and we want to continue to do that, but we're also picky about it.
That's really good advice. So for you, those core values have been central in your acquisition strategy and your managing partner strategy.
It's central in all our decision making, right? Even vendors that we bring on, Neil, quite frankly, if we found you to have a lack of integrity, we would have ended the relationship. Obviously, we don't feel that. We've been with you guys for 7 years, but our core values got us in lots of decision making, and especially with hiring and firing and those types of things.
I agree. I think for us too, like as we've grown over the years, like 70 plus staff, the bigger that you are, I think the more those core values really have to come into play, right? And so I think that can be something that really helps you in growing your practice, whether you're a single location or a multiple clinic location. If you really identify what makes you guys tick, what you guys value, you can make a lot of decisions around that, right? So and your team does too. So you can make your team, do they all align to our core values? And you can, if they don't, then you can, lead, hire, or fire to those core values. So exactly. I'm curious for you, like in building that core value, the culture of your businesses, have you ever made like, a wrong decision or hiring decision that kind of hurt the culture?
Yes. And anybody tells you that they haven't is probably over exaggerating a little bit. You do, you get, you lower your standard for a minute, you get a little desperate. And again, good advice would be don't do that. Stick to your standards. And at the same time, when you do that, you've got to fix it. And so our core values are pretty clear, but when folks are outside of those lines, it creates problems for everybody else who's inside those lines if you allow it to continue. And so, like you said, you can either lead them or you can lead them off the bus. And sometimes you've got to do that and fall on the sword and understand that you've made a bad hire. And it happens.
Yeah, it happens, right? And I think that's part of being an executive is knowing like, hey, you're going to make mistakes, right? But you don't have to be right 51% of the time.
I tell my wife 52% of the time I'm right. I give myself just a tiny bit more, Neil.
I love it. And so as you have worked through so many, acquisitions and de novo clinics and kind of getting going there with managing partners, how does that look? Is it like, hey, we have this all mapped out and we want you to start to integrate with what we have mapped out, or do we like learn from what you guys are doing and then kind of meet somewhere in the middle? I'm curious of what you found to work well there. So as other practices out there do acquire clinics and look to work together, what's kind of the best scenario that you found to be?
Yeah, no, great question. So we always are willing to learn from everybody, and we do. But there's some things that are kind of standard procedures that kind of we follow, how we schedule, how we take care of patients, how we document. Like, there are a lot of bigger practices out there that keep folks on their EHR system. Everybody's on one system with us. It just creates a lot more availability of data for us to help them manage themselves. We've got just a tremendous amount of data that comes in from we use Raintree and Yellowfin, and it just works out really, really well for us to be able to manage the business. And so those are the things we won't compromise on. But if folks have procedures that have worked well, and if we can take what they've done and implement it into us, we're certainly willing to do that for sure.
The top 10% of PT owners aren't just surviving, they're thriving. But what's their secret? Well, Neil Trickett's new Market to Grow book reveals how the top 10% of PT practices leverage marketing systems to simultaneously grow their new patients, attract top talent, and boost profit in their practice. You can learn from their secrets. Visit practicepromotions.net/book to claim your free copy of Market to Grow. Yes, you heard that right. We are shipping a free copy of Market to Grow to all podcast listeners who want it. Just visit practicepromotions.net/book to claim your free book. And now back to the show.
Very interesting. So as you've grown there and you have grown your systems and processes, I've seen things go different ways. So there's kind of ways that I've seen like you guys do, which is as you grow with clinics, you bring them in. Obviously, the branding comes under the umbrella. You look to obviously incorporate systems and processes that you've had. And then we also see a lot of clinics that try to keep the individual clinics, and they kind of do a managing partner of all these different umbrella, being the umbrella, and then all these different brands underneath. And I'm curious from your perspective, what you found to work better for either direction.
So first of all, we realize that healthcare is done locally. And we realize some of these brands have been around for a very long time and have a lot of, community awareness and tradition, and quite frankly, a lot of emotion for the owners. Tremendous amount. I know I do. And so, but we still do a transitional rebranding, and there are a lot of reasons for it. There's a lot of power with a bigger brand, right? From a marketing perspective, we just can invest more dollars across. If we had 60 different brands, it would be really hard to market for everybody. But for one brand or two brands or three brands, it's much, much easier to do the marketing and get our messages there. But I think Andrew Jaminow and his team, he's on OpEx and integrations, is very thoughtful, and also the marketing team, about how we transition the brand. We'll get ahead of it. We'll talk to the doctors and let them know what's going on. We'll send correspondence to patients and let them know what's going on. We'll make sure that the staff understands how to talk to patients when they ask questions about what's going on. And we're never going in and buying out somebody. We're always partnering with usually the founder. And so that partner's got to be, a spokesperson for why we're doing what we're doing. And a lot of it, when we get the right partner, which we do most of the time, is because we're able to invest in their teams and give them more opportunities than he was without us. And that's, again, when you have the right partner and they're thinking about their teams, we always know, like, whoa, these are folks we want on our team. So I think there's a lot of reasons, to be able to do it. But we do realize it's emotional, it's difficult. But we have a long track record of partners who will tell you that it's worked out really, really well.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's something that I agree with too, after seeing so many different variants of acquisitions, and that there is just a power in the brand, right?
Yes.
But I do wholeheartedly agree that it has to be methodical in terms of the transition of the brand, and you can't just, cut ties the first week, that's going to cause a lot of upsets and kind of hurt the brand as a whole there. But I agree that if you can consolidate and empower the core brand, that's going to have a lot more value than if you try to keep everything separate, for sure. And so, curious for you, as you've gone through all of these, growth of managing partners there. What has some of the things that you're management team focused on to empower those core values to keep the patient care focus going as you acquire and go through that whole change?
Yeah, so most of the managing partners that open a clinic with us have kind of grown up with us. So we know them. We know that they're truly vetted in how we do things. It's a little bit more of a rigorous process with the partnerships we take on. But again, our business development team and Brady do a great job of really spending a lot. Sometimes it's years before we take on a partnership, of getting to know folks, to make sure that there's a real cultural mix, to make sure that they understand where we are with patient care to match where they are. Otherwise, we're probably not going to partner with them. And then there's a lot of repetitive communication about access, outcomes, and experience. And those are things we track. We know how long it takes us to get patients in the door. How long does it take a new patient to get in the door for each location? For outcomes, we actually monitor 4 different outcomes for our entire staff. We have an outcomes registry built into our EHR system, and we have a continuing education program that teaches all of our therapists what they need to do in order to put the outcomes in the system. So we've kind of made this a major priority, and our NPS scores, our patient experiences, are over 93 right now. I mean, they're beyond world class. And so we pound that communication about access, outcomes, experience to our teams and to our leaders. And it really resonates, and it should. And at the same time, we're trying to push PT to the front of the line. And again, PTs, are very excited about that.
That's fantastic. And so is one of the priorities then trying to, because I would imagine at scale like that, it's can be hard to get the information up from the individual clinics and gain that valuable data in mass. So like how do you tackle that? What do you look for there?
Information up in what way? I want to make sure I understand the question.
Well, like you're just talking about like patient outcomes, those kind of like how things
so the outcomes are built into our systems. We know the outcomes, and we know them for the location, we know them for the therapist. So we actually again, we developed a continuing ed program to teach our PTs how to do these outcome measures. And we built them into Raintree. And so we've built a registry. And so every location, every therapist knows how their outcomes are and how they stack against us and how they stack against other providers. And so it's a major kind of commitment that we have to make sure that our therapists and are keeping up with their outcomes. We know what their NPS score is. Right. We know on an access level for the location, we know how long it takes to get patients in. So that's the drum we beat, and our communication from Brady to Tom Davis to all the regional directors, it's constant. They hear about it all the time and they understand it. And so the communication piece is really, really important, written, verbal. And the other thing is about getting feedback. Brady has literally been in, I don't know, 75 offices this year, maybe more. He's got a real commitment to hearing feedback and making sure we hear it and we act on it. And so, and Tom Davis is the same way. And so our leaders are in the offices making sure we gather feedback, not only just from surveys, but actually spending time in the offices. So we're committed to it.
A really fantastic methodology and approach. Is that something that you've seen as you've looked at different clinics? Do they sometimes struggle with getting that outcome data or like the NPS scores, things like that? Is that like a key challenge that you see as they start to scale?
No small clinic does outcome measures. They can't do it unless they outsource it or they have a very, very hard time. Nobody's doing it the way we're doing it right now. NPS scores, a lot of them do. That's offered, but on the outcome side, smaller clinics just don't have the resources to be able to do what we're doing.
Yeah, and going back to what you were saying before, like when you have a larger entity, right? You have those capabilities to get more of that key data because you can have more complicated systems to do that, and sometimes it's hard to do at a smaller scale. But I think it's so key as you get larger. You need to have that feedback of the outcomes, how long people are in therapy for, how do they feel about coming for therapy, and that could be where a lot of make or break is done in the revenue for the business, to be frank, right? Not only like the patient's getting better, but if they're not getting fully better, if they're not having a tremendous positive experience there, they're not going to go around telling other people, and they're not going to complete their plan of care. So all of those things can definitely impact the business.
100%.
And so, Steve, for you, at 170 plus clinics, there has to be a tremendous recruiting and hiring constant need. And so I'm curious, what have you done in your approach? You're kind of pivoting with the changes after COVID. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, post-COVID, everything changed, right? And there's a number of things, but the biggest area of the business that changed was recruiting PTs. And so we've made a lot of investments. Jim Burns heads up our talent acquisition team. He's amazing. And, we've got, a big staff of folks that are just very, very motivated to find the right PTs to help us achieve our vision. And so I think we've made a lot of investments, and we've trained them to understand our value proposition and what we offer as an organization. We have really just an incredible, for new grads that come on. We have an early program which really kind of teaches them how to be a PT in the first few years, and have a stair step for them to become senior PTs over that time period. And obviously we have this managing partner model where PTs who are more growth oriented or more entrepreneurial, that really want to take their profession to a different level and their business, can come along for the ride. So we have a career growth opportunity that most businesses don't have, which is, our talent acquisition team does a really good job, talking to folks about. Our continuing education program, I would put up with anybody in the country. It's led up by Dave Nolan out of Northeastern. He's a professor there, and he runs sports medicine at Mass General, and he's been taking care of our continuing ed for the last 15 years or so. He's amazing. And along with Terry Pratt, he's one of our therapists up in Maine, and these guys are known nationally, and they just put an unbelievable program together. And we have a lot of different offerings, and we're just really proud of where we've come from and what we're able to offer now. So I think, building a talent acquisition team that understands the values that we can offer has really made a big difference for us.
Yeah, and I see it. I've had the pleasure of working with Bay State on your career website and everything, and I could just tell from the detail that was given to us to build out that website is amazing. And I think that, again, if you're looking to scale your practice, really, once you get to 5-10 locations plus, I mean, you have to have a really thorough, methodical approach to talent acquisition and developing talent. And I can see that you guys put an enormous amount of effort into that. And just like you were saying, everything from, your internship programs, your new grad programs, mentoring programs, and then the therapist development, you have that completely mapped out so people can see their future. And then the managing partner, growth capabilities there, they see that future for the ones that want to take that advantage. So, kudos to you guys for really putting so much effort into that, models, and it just shows in, your ability to acquire talented therapists, develop talented therapists, and retain talented therapists.
100%. Nothing more important at this point.
Yeah, and it is one of the most critical things in practice, because the people are delivering the care, right? They're the ones that are getting the outcomes for the patients. And so if we get into a revolving door in our business where people come in, they leave, it's very hard to get traction in the business. It's very hard to move forward. And everything suffers, from outcomes to revenue to reputation. And so I think that especially growing practices, multi-location practices that put a bigger emphasis in their structure and approach to talent acquisition and development, they're the ones making good strides forward. And so For you, Steven, as you've grown the business and obviously taken on enormous amounts of responsibility building a team, what has that looked like for you personally? Was there a point where you had that team really starting to groove in and you were kind of pulling back and being very strategic and kind of, was there a point where that started to happen for you?
I'm trying to understand the question because that's happened over a number of different points for me.
Yeah, so I'm curious about that because going from a single location to then having two or three locations to then having 10, 20, 50, 100, there's different points. And so I'm curious for you personally, what has that felt or looked like as you've built this team and you kind of come back to that or build up to that next level of being strategic? What I'm curious from your side as far as that kind of history, what that looks like.
It always comes back to building the team and hiring the right people. And, so one of the kind of the foundational books, for me was the E-Myth. And the E-Myth talks about, that there are three different people. There's the technician, and the technician in our business is actually the physical therapist. There's the manager, and there's visionary. And he talks about, the technician is the lowest level in the business. And that if you ever want to, rise up in your own business, is you've got to replace doing $10 work with $20 work or $50 work or whatever the analogy is. And so it's really, really hard to do when you're a clinician at heart and you like taking care of people. And that gives you a serotonin boost every time, you do a good job with somebody, you help them on a more natural path and help change their lives positively. In order to grow the business, you've got to sort of start replacing yourself and doing this. So for me, it took very long to do that. It would, I'd work full time taking care of patients. And then as the business continued to grow, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to, instead of work, I'm not going to work Saturdays anymore. And then I'm not going to work. I'm only going to work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, full days. I'll have Tuesday, Thursday to work on the business. And then that went for a period of time. And then it was, okay, I'm only going to see patients Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning. I just couldn't pull myself out of care. A, I felt incongruent telling somebody how to do something when I wasn't doing it myself. But B, I also just felt like this is where I'm supposed to be. And so it just took a long time. So there were points along the way where it's just like, it's just mind boggling. Like, wow, like someone else could do this and everything still works fine, and as I've removed myself, that has continued to the point where now I've removed myself as CEO and Brady's doing a phenomenal job. And so, but if you invest in the right people and make sure they're growth orientated, that's what you have to do. You got to create opportunities for them as well. And so there's been a lot of, aha moments along the way, especially, over the last year for me. That's been probably the biggest one.
And what's that? What would you say for yourself personally that's been that massive change?
Well, I was, in the day-to-day making every last decision. And, last November, I had Brady step in and I'm now the executive chair and my role's changed. I'm not making the day-to-day. He is. And I'm supporting him and I'm helping with the strategy and working with some of our partners. But my, the roles changed. But the aha is the business is continuing to flourish. It's doing phenomenal, if not the best it's ever been. So, sometimes you just got to get out of the way.
That's right. Stop being the bottleneck, right? So that's interesting though, because I think for me too, what I've seen is that you love empowering your team, but getting out of your own way, right? And being it's kind of, it's a growth of the business, but it's a growth in yourself too, right? And I think that's one thing.
Well, there's a lot of ego involved, right? You think, you have to be involved in everything. And as you start to remove yourself and you see the business continue to do well or even do better, it's like, oh, and that's happened over the years. So many different, that's why when you asked the question, I was like, God, that's happened so many times. Because as you keep, if you think of a organizational chart and in the beginning in your business, you're in every single box, right? And so the idea with the E-Myth was, okay, the lowest level one, start to replace yourself. Well, the lowest level one is actually the guy doing the hands-on work, the PT. But you start taking, if you pay the bills, take yourself out of that box. If you do the marketing, take yourself out of that box. If you're doing HR, take yourself. So as you slowly start to take yourself out of boxes, and you have more time on the vision of the business and management of the business and training your people and so forth, like the business doesn't fall apart, it actually grows. And that's the hardest part for real technicians, for real therapists who love taking care of patients or chiropractors or whoever we're talking about. It's just the hardest thing. But as you do, you see the business continue to grow and evolve. And it really depends where your heart is and what you want to do. And so for me, that was kind of my journey. It probably took longer than it could have. Well, definitely took longer because I just couldn't pull myself away. If I pulled myself away early and just made it about growing a business, I could have done this a long time ago. But that's not what it was. I was still very much wanted to, be with patients. So it's been an interesting journey and a great question.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. And I've seen that. I'm curious for your side too, like as you've worked with different size clinics that you incorporate with or bring on as managing partners. Sometimes I see it like that 2 to 3 clinic location level that the practice owner is still quite a bit in patient care and they're like juggling all these plates, trying to keep things going. I'm just curious from your side as you work with people, is that something that you see like the ones that make that breakthrough, the ones that finally start to give more of the patient care away and focus on the business growth?
Yeah, I'm like I said earlier, I'm working with a handful of my own managing partners. It's what we talk about all the time. Like what they'll do is, they'll have a block of time to go train their front desk or train a new therapist. And then they'll see that patients can't get in. And they'll say, you know what, I could just see a few more patients during that hour. And they won't do that because they see that activity as less of impact than taking care of patients because there's dollars coming in. I'm like, you're missing the boat. You're doing the lowest level activity. You should be doing higher level activities. And so there's a transition in the head that has to happen, that when you have time to train your front desk, to train your staff, to invest in them, that you don't take that away. Even if you need to see a patient come in earlier or stay later, that time that's dedicated to manage, or maybe even some time for you to think and see where this practice is going, don't fill that with patient care time. You're not going to allow yourself to grow. It's a little counterintuitive, but that's the kind of the hook that all these clinicians are in, because they're just so like, hey, I'm the guy who's running the ship, and patients want to see me, so the ego comes in, and I guess they want to see me. I'm the only one who can take care of them. I guess I'll see them at 12:30 when I'm supposed to train Alice at front desk. Well, now Alice keeps screwing up everything at the front desk, but you're not spending time with her. What's going to be more important, every phone call she makes for the next week or that one patient you just saw? And so there's a lot of lessons there.
It sure is. And Steven, you've given us tremendous insight today. Thank you for helping us navigate through your journey and the tips and strategies that you've done to be so successful. I'm curious, do you have any final advice for practice owners out there?
The biggest advice is be very choosy, invest in your team. People are your biggest asset always. And so attract the best people you can. And you do that by, for us, it was very intentional about having core values that really resonated with our leadership team to make sure we got the right people on the team. And then start replacing yourself in lower area things that you shouldn't be doing. And you got to really identify those and then be disciplined enough to not fall back into that so that you can help grow your organization.
Fantastic advice. Thank you so much, Steven, and congratulations on all your success and hard work there, and to your team building up a phenomenal business. And I wish you much success into the future.
Neil, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed working with you over these last several years. Thanks for your help.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And so to all our listeners out there, thank you for listening to our podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the Practice Marketing Podcast, as well as to our YouTube channel, on Practice Promotions YouTube channel. Tons of advice for you on there. And at practicepromotions.net, where you can download tons of free advice and tips and strategies on how to get more marketing results for your practice. So this is Neil Trickett from the Practice Marketing Podcast, wishing you much success in your practice.
A free way for you to support our show is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's a chance for you to tell us what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it as well. Just scroll down to ratings and review on your phone and click write a review. Thanks.